जगन्नाथ बलेश्वर रमाई की जय, नरसिंह भगवान की जय, पंचतत्व की जय, ईश्वर गोस्वामी की जय, गुरु परंपरा की जय, श्री गुरुपाद की जय, गुरुदेव टैगोर की जय। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today we will be taking from 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The verse number is 10. Let us recite the verse. Prayana kale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bhuvor madhye pranam aveshya samya satam param purusham upaiti divyam. Translation and by Prabhupada. One who at the time of death fixes his light hair between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a very, very important chapter which we are discussing. You have been hearing from different Prabhus and Matajis. So this is a very, very useful chapter. See, actually in this purport, Prabhupada is speaking about the 6 chakras, the gas chakra and all, the different yogas and all. Let us see how it is. See, for most people in the Western world, but it becomes like a fashion. Yoga is nice. It's like a nice workout. It's mystical, not of the spiritual goal. So, therefore, it has remained largely very unrecognized. See, because the need for a good system of exercise and health in the West, yoga has naturally been appreciated most on these terms, focusing on like postures, like as for a seat, asanas, and breathing techniques like pranayama and all those things. But they are not the all in all in yoga. Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport of 4th canto, 4th chapter, 25th verse in Bhagavatam. He says, before practicing the real yoga system, one has to practice the sitting postures because this helps in the breathing exercises which control the airs going upwards and downwards. See, no one in this age can attain the perfection stage of such yoga. But people, they indulge in practicing sitting postures, which is more or less a gymnastic process. So there are many Hatha Yoga postures like standing, Uttishta Sthiti, then sitting, there is Upavishta Sthiti, then say standing on the head like Shirshasana, right? So there are subtle tubes in the body called nadis, which must be purified. It is known as nadi shuddhi. How? By the practice of pranayama. So yogis say that when the nadis are impure, the prana cannot pass through the middle Shushumna Nadi channel. Prabhupada mentions in his purport in Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 25th chapter, 16th verse, the yogic process for controlling the air within the body and the different nerves is called Shushumna, the path of liberation. So the Shushumna Nadi is the most important pathway of the subtle body, which when pure is utilized by the yogi for deep meditation. But first he has to withdraw the senses from the sense objects. That is pratyahara. So pratyahara is to divert one's sensual activities from outward to inward. So it is only after pratyahara one can enter to deep meditative concentration, which helps gain cooperation with the internal energy. In the subtle body represented by servant of Krishna known as Kundalini Devi, which when properly dealt, it reconnects us with the internal energy of the Lord. And this is called Kundalini Yoga. In his book, Srila Prabhupada, Light of Bhagavata, He says, because the living entity is classified as marginal energy and is of the same quality as the internal energy, it is quite natural for him to cooperate with the internal energy. But when the living entity prefers to cooperate with the external energy, he is put into difficulty. So by the process called pratyahara, diversion, yoga diverts our energies from the external to the internal. My Guru Maharaj says that when we lovingly vibrate and sing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the shlokas from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then all the good effects of pranayama and other asanas are inbuilt in it. No need to go through those difficult processes. And not only that, these transcendental sound vibrations are pleasing to the mind and the soul and does not have any rigorous rules and technicalities like other yogas. So in Bhagavatam 4:23, 13 and 14, we learn from Maharaj Prithu, who performed the Kundalini Yoga, sitting in a special posture called Muktasana, which facilitates directing one's life energy upward, penetrating 6 material energy centers, chakras, by yogic force. So the translation says, in due course of time, when Prithu Maharaj was to give up his body, he fixed his mind firmly upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus, completely situated on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he gave up the material body. See, when Prithu Maharaj practiced a particular yogic sitting posture, he blocked the door of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life air upward, passing it on to the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, and finally pushed it upward to the central position between his two eyebrows. So Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport, those who are in Krishna consciousness can return to Godhead without even practicing the Muktasana process. This is so because the Bhakti Yogi, practicing Bhakti Yoga, is always situated on the Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita 14.26, where Krishna uses a similar word, Brahma Bhuyaya, the state of Brahman. He says, one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at one transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. That's why the Bhagavatam verse 4:30:20, 4:30:20, actual experience of Brahma Bhuta is given, where it says, always engaging in the activities of devotional service, devotees feel ever increasingly fresh and new in all their activities. So the all-knower, the super soul within the heart of the devotee, he makes everything increasingly fresh. So this is known as the Brahman position by the advocates of the absolute truth. So in such a liberated stage, Brahma Bhuta, one is never bewildered. Nor does one lament or become unnecessarily jubilant. And this is due to the Brahma Bhuta situation. So I'll just take the purport of Bhagavatam 4:23:14, which clarifies the verse which we are discussing now. Prabhupada very beautifully and clearly explains this one in this. See, the sitting posture described with regard to Maharaj Prithu is called Muktasana. In yoga process, after following the strict regulative principles like controlling sleeping, eating, and mating, one is allowed to practice the different sitting postures. See, the ultimate aim of yoga is to enable one to give up this body according to his own free will. So one who has attained the ultimate summit of yoga practice can live in the body as long as he likes, or as long as he is not completely perfect. So he cannot leave the body to go any, but if he is completely perfect, he can leave the body to go anywhere within or outside the universe. Now, some yogis, they leave their bodies to go to the higher planetary systems and enjoy the material facilities there. Now, Prabhupada says, however, intelligent yogis do not wish to waste their time within this material world at all. They do not care for the material facilities in the higher planetary systems also, but are interested in going directly to the spiritual sky, back home, back. So from the description of this in this verse, it appears that Maharaj Prithu, he had no desire to promote himself to the higher planetary systems. He wanted to return home immediately, back to Godhead. Although Maharaj Prithu, he stopped all practice of mystic yoga, after realizing Krishna consciousness, he took advantage of his previous practice and immediately placed himself on the Brahma Bhuta platform in order to accelerate his return to Godhead. See, the aim of this particular system of asana, known as the sitting posture for liberation or Mukta Asana, is to attain success in Kundalini Chakra and gradually raise the life from the Mooladhara Chakra to the Swadhisthana Chakra, then to Manipura Chakra, the Anahata Chakra, the Vishuddha Chakra, and finally to the Agnya Chakra. This is what Prabhupada specifies in the purport of this 8.10. See, when the yogi reaches the Agnya Chakra, that is between the two eyebrows, he is able to penetrate the Brahma Randra or the hole in the skull, hole in his skull, and go to any planet he desires up to the spiritual kingdom, Vaikuntha or Krishnaloka. See, the conclusion is that one has to come to the Brahma Bhuta stage for going back to Godhead. However, Prabhupada very nicely explains, those who are in Krishna consciousness or who are practicing Bhakti Yoga, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam. Those who are practicing Bhakti Yoga can return to Godhead without even practicing the Muktasana process. So the purpose of Muktasana practice is to come to the Brahma Bhuta stage. For without being on the Brahma Bhuta stage, one cannot be promoted to the spiritual sky. That's why Bhagavad Gita 14.26, it says, Mam cha yopya vicharena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samati tyaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. The Bhakti Yogi practicing Bhakti Yoga is always situated on the Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So if a devotee is able to continue on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he enters the spiritual sky automatically after death and returns to Godhead. And Prabhupada gives an encouraging statement, right? Consequently, a devotee need not feel sorry for not having practiced the Kundalini Chakra, for not penetrating the 6 chakras one after another. As far as Maharaj Prithu was concerned, he had already practiced this process. And since he did not want to wait for the time when his death would occur naturally, he took advantage of the Sat Chakra penetration process and thus gave the body according to his own free will and immediately entered the spiritual sky. See, these are technicalities. And the current generation, this Kali Yuga, this is not possible, right? These things. So those people, they were very pure, should be pure in heart. Then only these things can do those, but otherwise it's not possible. So don't need to worry about that. So that's why when I was discussing and telling about all those different chakras and all this, so difficult is yoga. Yes, it is difficult, especially in this age. And Prabhupada gives a very encouraging statement. A devotee need not feel sorry for not having practiced these chakras or penetrating the 6 chakras. Just what is more important, easy for all of us to understand is just to follow lovingly, vibrating Hare Krishna mantra, saying Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Or even chanting the various shlokas of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. What happens is, all the very good effects of even pranayama and other asanas, they're all built in these shlokas, the meters and everything. So when you recite the shlokas and all, chant the Hare Krishna mantra, everything is already included. So these transcendental sound vibrations, they're pleasing to the soul, to the mind. This is food for the soul. And thereby we do not have to do any rigorous rules or any other things of technical aspects of the yogas. No need. Just chant Hare Krishna mantra, recite the verses from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Then automatically Krishna will take care. Just we have to do Sarva Dharman Parityaj Mamekam Sharan Bhaja Aham Tvam Sarupapebhyo Moksha Shalmas. Just surrender unto me, do not fear. I will take care. So don't worry. So many technical verses will come down. Though you should not be worried about these things. That's why just chanting. It's so simple. Prabhupada says just by chanting you can go back to God. Somebody has doubts. Is it so simple? Of course it is simple, but we are making it very, very complicated. So stop here. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Prashimad Bhagavad Gita. Shirvupa Vancha Kalpaturubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhaya Vichitanam Pavanam Vishnu. Hare Krishna. Prabhu is my place. Thank you.